All right, three, two, one. Good morning, y'all. This is Ned over My Philippine Dreams, and to the E to the D over at MPD. Coming at you from Dumaguete City, the city of gentle people, except when they're driving. Negros Oriental, the Philippines, area code 6200. Today is May 24th, 2018, the first day of the rest of our lives. So let's go forth and make the best of it, even though it's brutally hot already here in the Philippines. I think next year what I'm going to do is try to leave like around May 1st and then come back like on June 1st because it seems the worst of summertime is in May. All right, we got some disturbing news to talk about today. I just actually found out about this yesterday. This actually occurred as I was leaving the United States and I was in the process of my 36-hour journey back to the Philippines, so I wasn't made aware of it until yesterday. Let's make sure we're actually live. Also, if you're in the comment section, try to keep it clean. Yeah, sad news indeed. And this is coming from the province of Negros Occidental, which is just north of us. We're on the same island. Negros Oriental is where Dumaguete is, and Negros Occidental is to the north. And this concerns the cities of Silay and Sipalay. They sound similar, but they're two different areas. One's on the northwest, and one is on the western coast of Negros Occidental. But let's get right into it. Again, this is some sad news coming out from Negros Occidental. American national shot dead after refusing to buy beer for Filipinos. Disturbing news concerning a murdered American living in Negros Occidental, the province just north of our own little humble Negros Oriental. According to all reporting outlets, which as usual are few and far between here in the Philippines, a 57-year-old American who was in the process of adopting a Filipino child was summarily shot in the head after refusing to buy beers for two Filipinos. Shortly after 10 p.m. on Tuesday, May 15th, 2018, again, this was when I was leaving the United States, the American, Eric Hendrickson, was having a drink in a resto bar in Silay City. And you can see the photos in the background. One of the photos should be of the actual crime scene. It looks like a disreputable little grimy resto bar. Two Filipinos who were strangers to Mr. Hendrickson approached the American and asked him to buy them beers. According to witnesses, Mr. Hendrickson refused the request politely, but despite this, the two Filipinos commenced to insult him in Ilonggo, a local dialect that the American apparently understood. Mr. Hendrickson then allegedly exchanged heated words with the two Filipinos. The American started to walk away from the argument when one of the locals, seeming to take offense, decided to pull out a pistol and shoot the American in the head 3 times. Mr. Hendrickson was then taken to a local hospital, probably on a trike, where he was not surprisingly declared dead on arrival. The two shooters, 18-year-old Neil Brian Corseño and his 40-year-old uncle Gilbert Apelido, fled the murder scene but were captured within minutes by Silay City PNP. Both Filipinos were noticeably intoxicated. Recovered also was a .38 caliber pistol, and in the pistol there were 5 spent shell casings. Mr. Hendrickson again was shot in the head 3 times, so they must have missed a couple times. The family of Mr. Hendrickson reports that he was in the city processing adoption paperwork for an orphan child, Jeremiah, in order to bring him to the United States. Since the brutal shooting, the family has launched an appeal to repatriate Mr. Hendrickson's body to the United States and complete the adoption process. A link to the GoFundMe page can actually be found down in the video description box. It was actually put up there by Heather Nemec, their niece, to help pay for the costs of repatriating the body and completing the adoption paperwork. The couple's niece, Heather Nemec, who set up the GoFundMe, stated, "My uncle and aunts have always wanted children, but due to issues beyond their control, they were unable to conceive. So they turned towards adoption in my aunt's birthplace in the Philippines, where they fell in love with a little boy named Jeremiah, who was given up at birth." So again, this is an orphan kid at one of the local orphanages. The mother is obviously Filipino. They must have lived in that area for a little while because Mr. Hendrickson allegedly knows Ilonggo. So that's the deal there. Eric and Vicky loved Jeremiah so much, but to get him, they needed one of them to stay behind to be able to do the legal adoption via Philippines adoption processes. Now Jeremiah's adopted mother, Vicky, is scrambling to get him adopted by herself and left having to deal with the unexpected murder of her husband halfway across the world. I am asking for help for my aunt and for Jeremiah, who are in the middle of the adoption process. Again, these are Heather Nemec's words. Bringing Eric home will cost almost $8,000 US. Paying for a funeral will be thousands more. Thank you for anything you can spare. Any money raised will go towards funeral expenses, bringing Eric home, legal fees incurred by the murder, full adoption of Jeremiah, and help for Eric's widowed wife. Again, the link for the GoFundMe page is down in the video description box. Okay, here's my take. Here's my 2 centavos on this. Keep in mind that this is just my opinion. I'm not super educated on the Philippines. I've been here for about 5 years, but I'm still kind of clueless when it comes to a lot of things. But when incidents like this occur, there's usually a pattern. There's usually things that occur in a recognizable pattern. And these are what we're going to talk about now. So let's break it down. First up is balat sibuyas. Balat sibuyas is onion skin. Filipinos can be notoriously thin-skinned when it comes to confrontation or insults, whether the insults or confrontation are real or simply perceived. So that's an issue. Amor proprio, we've talked about this before. The term is basically love and respect for self, but can also be seen as an amalgamation of the Asian face and Spanish like machismo. It seems to be a strange mix of the two. Hiya, we've talked about hiya. Also, hiya is shame. This is brought about when somebody experiences a loss of face, when someone's amor proprio is violated. So basically, the insulted American who returned the insults in kind apparently violated the Filipinos' amor proprio and brought shame onto him, brought that hiya. The overly sensitive Filipino, having had his onion skin, his balat sibuyas peeled away, then saw no alternative but to pull out a pistol and shoot the offensive foreigner in the head. This might seem a bit odd, this might seem a bit incongruous, but also keep in mind the following. Overreaction. I like to call this emotional hemophilia. Filipinos sometimes can have a tendency to overreact to certain situations, especially in the heat of the moment. In short, their response to a scenario, to a situation, might be a little bit more emotional or forcible than is obviously justified. The murder of Mr. Hendrickson in this case is a good example of this. Words were exchanged, simple insults, and the offended Filipino overreacts, pulls out a pistol, and shoots him 3 times in the head. Another thing to keep in mind is Asian flush. A good number of Asians lack an enzyme, a biological enzyme necessary to efficiently break down alcohol. When they drink, they get extremely drunk extremely quickly. They experience hot flashes and their skin turns red if they're of light color. That's why they call it Asian flush. And they usually end up getting sick. In short, some Asians simply aren't able to handle their alcohol well. And when you add in the fact that they like to drink high alcohol content drinks like Red Horse, Tanduay, etc., coconut, rum, all that stuff, this can make for a volatile mix. Another thing to keep in mind is foreigner resentment. This is something that we don't talk about a lot, but it's something that we always have to keep in mind. Whether you want to believe it or not, some Filipinos actually resent having foreigners living or residing in their Philippines, in their home nation. You can look at it basically like this. If the situation and the roles were reversed, if the U.S. was a third world or developing nation and a bunch of wealthy Filipinos were coming over there to set up shops, to reside, to start businesses, they were throwing their money around, they were corralling up all of our beautiful women and seeming to live without consequence, I'm sure there would be a wee bit of resentment against them just as well. So that's something you always have to keep in mind. This is something that is not talked about by a lot of vloggers, but there is a good amount of foreigner resentment in the Philippines. Also, keep in mind with President Duterte, there's a lot of populism, there's a lot of nationalism. There's also the concept of Pinoy pride. If you want to go down a little rabbit hole, go on Wikipedia sometime and look up Pinoy pride. And this is often exacerbated by when they're drinking, when they're intoxicated, when they're drunk. Also, the final thing we're going to talk about is guns. There are a lot of guns in the Philippines. A good number of them are illegally sourced. There's actually a town up in Cebu Island called Danao City, where they make a lot of these paltik, these counterfeit guns. You can get them cheap. They're not that expensive. They're stamped, somewhat machined. They're not like exquisite quality, but they get the job done. They are cheap, and the police here, the PNP, confiscate thousands of them every year. Unfortunately, that only puts a tiny little ding in the supply. There's a lot of guns here. A lot of people have guns. Okay, so that's enough on this. This is the situation. That's my 2 centavos. That's my take on it. Again, the overreaction, the emotional hemophilia, the balatsibuyas, the amor proprio, the hiya. The Philippines is different. It might seem very familiar to foreigners coming from certain countries like the United States, because the United States was here for 50 years. So it does seem very familiar. The English is there. Some of the customs are the same. But again, it's a different mindset when it comes to different scenarios and different situations, and it's something you have to keep in mind. And that emotional hemophilia, that tendency to overreact, that drama that they can bring up, is pretty bad. Also, condolences to Mr. Hendrickson's family, and our sincere hope that they can repatriate the body, they have the funeral, and complete the adoption process. This is a horrible situation, but maybe the completed adoption can be the one good thing that comes out of this. And again, pictures of the family are scrolling up beside me. You can see them there. I hope they're scrolling. Also, another incident. This happened just 3 days earlier in the town of Sipalay. Sipalay City isn't that far away from Silay. Silay City is on the northwest tip of Negros Occidental, and Sipalay is down southwest of that. Sipalay is famous for Sugar Beach, which is one of my favorite places to go to get away from it all. And on May 12th, a 79-year-old Australian national was stabbed to death there. The foreign pensioner, whose name is Tunis Van Dalen. Now, I don't know if this is another incident of Filipinos getting Australia and Austria confused, because that doesn't sound like an Australian name. It might be Austrian. I don't know. He had been living in Sipalay for 20 years. According to reports, an unknown individual forcibly entered his residence and stabbed him to death. A robbery motive is suspected, but has not been confirmed. So these are 2 murders of foreign nationals on my island within 3 days of each other. One guy getting shot in the head 3 times, and another 79-year-old foreigner stabbed to death by an unknown assailant. Your thoughts, your experiences, please leave them down in the comment section. Once this video goes live, I will also be putting up a corresponding blog article on this that I wrote to talk about that. All right, let's go to the comments section real quick. I don't want to make this too long. Ken Yora says, "Was this in Mindanao?" No, this was on my island. This is on Negros. You basically call it Negros, which is separated into 2 areas. To the south, you got Negros Oriental, and to the north is Negros Occidental. Google is Evil says, "Don't go to bars." Yeah, that's another incident. This occurred at 10 p.m. You can see the photos of the crime scene of the resto bar that this guy was at. I don't want to fall into the trap of blaming the victim on this, because this should not have happened. Nothing justifies, having an argument with somebody, exchanging some words, and shooting him in the head 3 times. But going out late at night by yourself, hanging around drunk Filipinos, isn't the best advice, isn't best practices. This murder was in the province. Yeah, it was up in Silay City. Silay City is actually just as big as Dumaguete City. Its population is about 127,000. So it's not a small town. MD says 10 p.m. is not that late, though. That's late for me, man. I'm usually in bed by 8 p.m. Lynn's back there watching the live cast. How's it coming so far? Yeah, she can't. It's buffering. Evil Aloe says, "Evil Aloe, how are you, brother? That isn't his child." No, it's not his child. This is a good point to bring up, and this is something that I want to talk about at some other point also. So this guy, obviously this American, he's from Iowa, I believe. He came to the Philippines. He was hanging around up in Negros Occidental. He met this woman, Vicky. They fell in love. They came back to the United States, marriage visa, whatnot, K1. And tried to have kids. They couldn't have kids, so they decided to adopt a kid from the Philippines. Now, if you go online and you're a foreigner, this is the situation. This is the adoption process. If you're living in the Philippines, like I'm living in the Philippines, and I want to adopt, and I'm married, and I've been here for 10 years or whatever, a good citizen, and I want to adopt a Filipino kid from an orphanage, you can't do it. You simply cannot do it. A foreigner cannot adopt a kid from within the Philippines. So it has to be initiated from outside the country. So they'd have to go back to the United States, initiate the process. The fees are ridiculous. The orphanages, these Catholic and Christian agencies that are running these orphanages here, I believe it's $25,000 US to get one of these kids to initiate the process. And then the United States charges you fees on top of that. I think it's a little more reasonable. I think it's like $8,000 US. But I guess adoption. Me and my sister are both adopted, but I guess back, 50 years ago, it was a lot easier to get adoptions done in the United States, and I guess it's more difficult nowadays. So people are looking to China, they're looking to the Philippines, and all that. I actually did a lot of research on this topic, and not a lot of Filipinos get adopted from outside sources because of these exorbitant fees that these religious agencies, these Christian and Catholic agencies, are charging. What's CR? CR is comfort room. It's bathroom. Oh, resto bar. Yeah. MD says Filipinos used to be afraid of killing foreigners, but things have changed now. Also, yeah, I mean, you got to look also at the role that extrajudicial killings have. According to independent human rights agencies, over 12,000 people, Filipinos, have been murdered, have been killed, have been adjudicated in this war on drugs that they've had here. So you got that in the collective consciousness. You got people getting killed. You got bodies in the streets, their head wrapped in packing tape. That sends a message. I don't know what kind of message that is because I'm not going to get into opinion. I'm reporting on the facts. So that's basically it. We got 225 people watching. This was a horrible incident. And again, this is why I do not mess with Filipinos. I got no problem whatsoever messing with another foreigner because Filipinos don't care. The police come, they're like, yeah, stop fighting. But Filipinos, they can be sometimes very sensitive. They can tend to overreact. They can go get their friends. They can come back. You don't want to be confronting people. This isn't our country. People say we're guests here. People say we're visitors here. We're tourists. And it's not like we don't have a certain right to human rights and not to get shot in the head. But a lot of times we don't understand what's going on. And we get upset. We get angry. Somebody treats us unfairly, unkindly. You reciprocate in kind. And you think that it's not going to be a big deal, but sometimes, like in this case, this was a big deal. Also, these two individuals were visibly intoxicated. They were very drunk, the two Filipinos that were arrested in this. They admitted to the murder. They're both in jail now, so we're going to see what happens with this. Unfortunately, when something like this happens, everybody's a loser. There's no winners in a situation like this. The Filipinos are going to go to prison for a very long time. Their family's going to be affected. They probably lost some breadwinners. And the tragedy that's occurred to Mr. Hendrickson's family. And he was trying to do the right thing. Again, this might be a situation of let no good deed go unpunished. He's out here. He's trying to get a kid out of one of these orphanages. And if you've been to these orphanages, and God bless the people, at least in Dumaguete City, Valencia, the orphanages that I've seen here, they really take care of the kids well. And this guy was just trying to get this kid out, bring him to the United States, create a better life for himself, his wife, and for the kid. And hopefully this can happen. This is just terrible. Michael V says, Danny, it's safe there. It's more dangerous here in America. Actually, you can crunch the numbers in a few different ways. I got a link to one site that actually shows that it's more dangerous for foreigners living in the Philippines, and especially, I guess Thailand's the worst. I've spoken about this before. Thailand's the worst. But also keep in mind that just within 3 days, 2 foreigners, one Australian or Austrian, the other American, were murdered in Negros Occidental. And I think the 2 towns are only like maybe 100 kilometers apart on the same island. So you got to be careful. Agreed with Ned. Messing with a Filipino will get carried by 6. Yeah. 2 cowards reasoning they lost face. I would reconsider going to the Philippines. This is something, I mean, we got to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. You guys saw the video I put up yesterday. We went to Pulang Bato. It's hot in the Philippines. We went up there, had a beautiful day, had a great time, had good company. And again, there's times when this place is paradise, and it's wonderful. And the people are generally just so nice. They're outgoing, they're approachable, but you scratch beneath the surface sometimes and you offend somebody the wrong way, and bad things can happen. So we got to talk about the good, we got to talk about the bad, and we got to talk about the sometimes ugly. And that's basically it. Ken Yoris asks, what's Bahala Na mean? Bahala na basically means it's up to whatever. It's up to God. It's up to Bahala na. Whatever will be, will be. If you say Bahala ka to somebody, and this is something they love doing here, Bahala ka means it's up to you. So Bahala is it's up to. Bahala na basically means like now or something else. Ka is you. So they use Bahala na a lot here, which is a good coping mechanism a lot of times because they have all these horrible like super typhoons and earthquakes and volcanoes going off. So a lot of times it's Bahala na. It's what will be will be. Wild Customs and Car says, live life, can't hide from it. Yeah, you got to go out, you got to have fun. Crazy people are everywhere, even here in the United States. If Lipke says it, oh, absolutely. I guess 2018. In 2018, more kids, more children in the United States were killed in schools than U.S. servicemen were killed in Iraq and Afghanistan in combat zones. So as of 2018, the United States schools are now more dangerous than combat zones in Iraq and Afghanistan. That's pretty sad. Reichman says, que sera, sera. Yeah, that's basically what Bahala na is. It's que sera, sera. What will be, will be. But the Bahala ka thing, trike drivers love to use this one. You'll get on a trike, you'll go somewhere, you'll get off, and you'll be the trike driver. You know, how much, Pila? And he'll say, Bahala ka, it's up to you. And then you offer him like 10 pesos. He gets all upset. You got to offer him more and more. And it's like, why don't you just tell me how much it is? Instead of, oh, Golden Rich, you are such a load. Thank you, Golden Rich. When you mix foreigners with alcohol and money, then they can become targets. Yeah, alcohol. I actually stopped drinking. I haven't had, well, actually had a beer the other night, one beer. But yeah, you start drinking, you get yourself in certain situations, and you start making bad decisions. It can be bad for all sides. You can get definitely bad for all sides. All right, so that's basically it. I know this is kind of a downer, but again, we got to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Hopefully, I'm going to be doing a video on things I'll miss about the United States, because I did the previous videos, things I won't miss about the United States, and I mentioned some politics, and man, people were like crying. They were out of their safe spaces. They were snowflaking. They were melting down. A bunch of people unsubscribed, and they unsubscribed when they left these tirades in the comment section and all this stuff. It's not that big of a deal, and that's what I'm not going to be sick of. I'm not going to be sick of stuff like that and people like that and people losing their minds over stupid shit. Sorry. So to all those who unsubscribed and are seeing this, bon voyage, bahala na. Good luck to you. Bahala na, is that Tagalog? Bahala na is Tagalog? Lynn. She's watching the buffering video. I'm not sure. I would assume it's Tagalog, Bahala na. I'm not sure. Because I get my Ilonggo, my Bisaya, my Tagalog all mixed together, and my English at this point. All right, so this is Ned over at My Philippine Dreams. Thanks to everybody who commented. Your comments will show in the video once it gets processed and uploaded. There's a little screen thing on the side. Also, special shout out to PV. Dude, we miss you. We want you to come back. We don't know what happened. Try to give us an update so that we can know. So until next time, on that happy subject, after talking about a disturbing subject, this is Ned over at My Philippine Dreams. Take care of you all, and I'll see you